What's happening, guys? This is Logan Robinson from NoleGameday.com. We're here live on a wonderful, fantastic Monday afternoon. Florida State is officially back in a game week when they face off against Kent State at home in Doak Campbell Stadium at 3:30 later this weekend. But today we've got some updates from Mike Norvell, including a very important one here about Ethan Pritchard. He also gave us some not really straightforward injury updates, but with the depth chart and what it gave to us, we will discuss some good news for Florida State moving forward on that front. We're also going to talk about some changes in the depth chart as well. We're going to go deep into Florida State's new AP poll ranking, and really interesting and maybe a little surprising that in a bye week for Florida State, they move up 3 spots. We'll talk about that as well. And then we're also going to talk about Thomas Castellanos, those Heisman odds. There's a lot of chatter right now, a lot of national reporters putting Tommy up there in that Heisman race. And honestly, we'll just talk about that quarterback outlook of the college football world right now. It's definitely changed a lot, I would say, Dustin, than what we were projecting during the summer. And we're finding that out really quickly. So with me this afternoon is Dustin Lewis, our editor-in-chief. D-Lou, bye week is over. It's on like Donkey Kong now moving forward, my man.
It's good to be back, that's for sure. An early week off for Florida State to kind of heal up there and, figure some things out after those early wins over Alabama and East Texas A&M. But, this is really, like you said, Logan, I mean, from here on out, it's time to play some football. You got this non-conference game against Kent State on Saturday. Obviously, Florida State a heavy favorite here. They'll be looking to get the starters out early like they did with East Texas A&M. But then right after that, I mean, you're rolling into your first conference game of the season only 6 days after this game against Kent State on the road at Virginia. So I'm sure that's something Florida State is already thinking about.
100%, man. I was actually over the weekend. I don't know if it was just me. I think all of the rest of the fan base was like, man, this kind of stinks not seeing FSU play out there, just how they've performed in the first 2 weeks. You're just wishing you could see some more Florida State football, but with the bye week helps FSU get some rehab in, like Mike Norvell was talking about this morning, get some guys improved there because, there's a few that still will be sitting out here for a couple of weeks, but Florida State specifically has some key players that got injured in that game against East Texas A&M, but are now expecting to be a full go. We'll discuss that in just a minute. But let's start off here, Dustin, with the update from Mike Norvell on Ethan Pritchard. I know you transcribed the entire quote here. I have all of that right here on my screen. But the most important news here is Norvell visited actually this morning with Pritchard and the rest of his family as well. He was told, though, on yesterday, Sunday, that Ethan Pritchard did open his eyes, at least had a blink there. That's what Norvell shared with us today, which is, of course, an encouraging update as well, positive one that you want to hear. I know that he's thanked the staff all the way over there at the hospital and a lot of the medical staff, too, for pouring in a ton of effort and trying to do a lot of things and improve him, and along with his rehab process. But I think this is obviously a great update here for the rest of the fan base that I wanted to start the show off with.
It's a positive step in the right direction for Ethan Pritchard for sure. And, obviously so much support from the community and for Ethan and for his family. And, it's been something that has been very hard for not only, what his family is obviously going through, but how it's impacted the coaching staff and this football team. It's been a very tough couple of weeks for Florida State, especially, with the success that they're dealing with on the football field. So, I mean, just to hear that Ethan has continued to make steps in the right direction, that's obviously big here. And, there were some developments in his case last week. 4 people were arrested in that shooting of Ethan Pritchard. So, I mean, that'll be something that we'll be following as that goes to trial and the things throughout. But, you just have to hope that Ethan can continue to get over these hurdles and, still a long way to go in this recovery for him, but continuing to think about him and wish him and his family all the best.
Mike Norvell said, I actually went by and saw him this morning, and there was been some progress. Yesterday, he opened his eyes, and it was something that was emotional for everybody, to be honest with you. There's still a long part of the progress and this process moving forward, but to put all things in perspective, the appreciation of a blink. He also said, to be able to be there and to see Ethan, a young man that for all things was literally just in the wrong place at the wrong time, a mistaken situation. Now he's fighting for it every single day, and to be able to see the work of the medical team. Gave a lot of praise to them this morning. But he was actually also able to share this news with the team as well. I think, we saw Earl Little Jr., who we just had on Hear the Spear last week. We saw him, run out onto the field with the jersey as well, which was, yeah, it's something surreal. It's just this team really does pull for one another, love one another, and that's something that is still in the back of their heads, as they go into practices every day, and then as they move into forward with the rest of the season. Let's jump over to some updates here from Florida State's depth chart and some notes here. Once again, Randy Pittman is not listed here on the depth chart. This is allowing now for Amari Williams and Landon Thomas to get a lot more burn. Amari Williams actually got more, but he was more the starter over Landon Thomas last week. So that's kind of the development there. In the tight end room, I do think we all expect for Randy Pittman to return for that first ACC game on the road next Friday night against Virginia. But that's the update there in the tight end room. Now on the offensive line side of things, Herb Hand is keeping with the starting five that he had previously in the two games. After beginning the season as a co-starter at both guard spots, redshirt senior Jacob Rizzi is now a backup to left guard Richie Leonard and right guard Adrian Medley, and then redshirt sophomore Andre Otto as a co-backup with Rizzi behind Leonard over there. And then to finish it off on the depth chart is Quindarius Jones, is now the primary backup spot to Jabril Rawls. Redshirt freshman Charles Lester III has moved to the other side as a co-backup with true freshman Shamar Arnu right behind senior Jerry Wilson. What stands out to you the most so far on this depth chart?
Yeah, nothing too crazy this week going into Kent State. I think Florida State, for the most part, they've figured things out with how they want this 2 deep to run after those wins over Alabama and East Texas A&M. I think the biggest thing is, seeing that some veterans on offense are still going to be out due to injury. Obviously, Randy Pittman recovering from a lower body injury that he suffered during the preseason. And, Mike Norvell talked about how he fought through that to play against Alabama. And then now, like you said, Logan, they're focused on getting him back healthy and ready for that conference opener on the road against Virginia. And then Roydell Williams, also still not listed on the depth chart there at the running back position, second straight depth chart where that's happened. He was also injured somewhere late in that Alabama game or so. And, he's missing some time. So we'll just have to see. I think, Amari Williams probably going to get the start there again for Florida State at tight end. Obviously scored a touchdown against East Texas A&M and looked pretty decent out there. And you know what Marquise Douglas brings to the table, a veteran guy who's played a lot of football in his career. And then Landon Thomas, I want to see him take some strides this week. It's been a slow start to the season for him. And, he was banged up for a lot of the summer, missed some time during the preseason. Didn't get a ton of reps against Alabama. Saw that snap count increase some against East Texas A&M, but I want to see him get some output out there against Kent State for sure. And then, as far as the offensive line, no real surprises there. Obviously, that starting five has been pretty good for Florida State so far. And Jacob Rizzi, he seems like the real sixth man for Florida State up front where, if someone was to go down or they need a guy to step in for a drive or a couple plays, he's someone that can fill in at multiple positions for Florida State.
I think it's been very telling from Herb Hand, given the praise to him. I think he thinks he's a caliber starting offensive lineman in this group. It just so happens to be that they've got a lot of veterans in this group, and they feel like the best chemistry right now is with those five. But you got to feel good when you have a sixth man certainly there at the offensive line position. And that was something that we were wondering who was going to step up and be that piece because knock on wood, things hopefully go well moving forward and guys can stay fully healthy, but it's football at the end of the day. Yep. And injuries do happen, certainly too, in the trenches. So having somebody back there, and the staff also feels pretty strongly about Andre Otto too. So if you're looking at a 6 or 7 kind of manned unit that you feel comfortable, I think, just coming off of the words from the staff so far of if they had to go out there, they feel like things could work well. One of the biggest question marks going into this week that we were monitoring that we mentioned last week during the bye week is updates on Squirrel White, Mari Williams, and Keziah Holmes, but all of those guys who suffered injuries.
Williams.
What do you say?
James Williams.
Oh yeah, I got Amari Williams on here. James Williams, Squirrel White, Keziah Holmes. Those guys all got injured in that East Texas A&M game, and certainly they're worrisome when you look over there at James Williams. You want to see him as your pass rusher, as one of your starting pass rushers. Of course, Squirrel White. We know what he was able to do against Alabama, and then Keziah Holmes is someone that has been a good and a great depth piece. Scored some touchdowns for you too so far in the season, but those guys listed back, fully good to go on the depth chart, which means we're going to see these guys on Saturday.
Likely. We'll see. We'll see if Mike Norvell gives a more specific injury update later on this week. He did talk about he feels good about where the team is at from a health standpoint, but there are still some guys trying to get over some things going up to kickoff on Saturday. I will say, it is a good sign that they are on the depth chart because obviously Randy and Roy Dell were both taken off the depth chart, and Mike Norvell straight up informed everybody that they would not be playing against East Texas A&M. So at the very least, there's a chance these guys, could be probable game time decisions. We'll see how it goes throughout the week. But at the same time, this is a game where Florida State, depending on whatever betting site or, whatever book you're using, they're favored between 39.5 points to like 44.5 points. This is another one where you're probably hoping your starters out of this game 6 or 7 drives into it before the end of the first half, like they were against East Texas A&M. So if you do go out there and put on a dominant showing, even if these guys were to play, they're not going to be playing very much.
So you're saying hopefully we won't have to see Squirrel White there catching punts, maybe potentially?
I would hope not. If I'm Florida State, if you have any starter or a key contributor who's not feeling close to 100% going into this game, I'm sitting them until next Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please. Let's not do that. But we'll see what things look like. See if we get some further updates from Coach on this. But it's certainly a good sign to see those guys on the depth chart going into this third game after those injuries. I want to bring up a video that I thought that was pretty hilarious that happened on College Game Day when they were up in Knoxville. I think almost everybody has seen it, but if you haven't yet, I thought I'd throw it up here. But Kirk Herbstreit was speaking with Kalen DeBoer on the field there in Tuscaloosa, and in the background, incredible stuff from the Tennessee fans of blasting the war chant. Here it is right here. I thought this was awesome. Oops. Is there any audio?
About trying to kind of remind them about that week, or do you said last week's in the past, but do you hold on to some of that just to keep that edge moving forward?
Yeah, the word edge and just holding on to the sting. It better happen. It better be a part of what we remember. And again, if you're not learning from your failures, what are we doing? And so, I think that guys have done
a pretty good war chant from the crowd, I must say. It's in rhythm. They're on sync with each other.
The week of practice, and so I did feel like we had an extra edge last week, and I feel like that's carried on into this week. But again, we'll see here in a few hours.
Coach, it's not fair. Tennessee's also Florida State fans. It is not. I did not see that coming, Coach.
You openly talked about after the loss to Florida State.
I thought that was awesome. It went viral. It went everywhere. And poor Kalen DeBoer, which, we got to talk about Alabama. They've looked pretty damn good after Florida State took care of business in week 1. But nonetheless, though, Tennessee getting a little bit of trolling there to Alabama.
Yeah, you think he heard that through the earpiece?
He had to have, man. He had to have heard it. He had to have.
Man, tough scenes for Alabama. But like you said, they've responded pretty well these last couple of games, beating up on UL Monroe, coming back, and really taking care of business against Wisconsin. And I think this is a victory where when people look back on it later in the year, it's one that's going to be very impressive for Florida State, because you look at what Ty Simpson has done these last 2 games, and granted, it was UL Monroe. It was a Wisconsin team that's probably not going to be up there among the top contenders in the Big Ten. But I mean, he absolutely decimated them. I can't remember exactly what it was at halftime, but I think like 18 out of 19 against Wisconsin. He set the consecutive completion record for Alabama in a single game against UL Monroe. This dude, Ty Simpson, like we talked about, coming off of Florida State's win over Alabama in that season opener, I think he's going to be a real problem as the season progresses.
Yeah, as Yanni's saying here on YouTube, apparently Alabama will now beat us 9 out of 10 times. Hypothetical.
Well, we saw the real game.
Yeah, we were there for that one. And you know what? I think who else has seen the real game is the AP poll voters, which Dustin, you usually do the pre-writes for these, and you kind of guess where that AP poll is going to be putting Florida State. And I don't think you were fully expecting to see 3 spots moved up for the Florida State Seminoles, but sure enough, here they are in the top 7 at number 7. You got Ohio State, Penn State, LSU, Miami, Georgia, Oregon. Then you got Florida State ahead of Texas, who is at number 8. You got number 9 with Illinois. And then you've got Texas A&M at number 10. Wow. Wasn't expecting 3 jumps on a bye week, I must say, Dustin. But these voters must feel pretty strongly, definitely after Florida State's first 2 games of the season.
Yeah. Another surprise for me. I mean, it was the same thing last week after they beat East Texas A&M. I didn't know that Florida State was going to go from 14 to a top 10 team. And then now, you're starting to inch up there towards number 5 before you've even played your first conference game of the season. So pretty impressive rise for Florida State. But I mean, there were some wacky results on Saturday. Obviously Notre Dame falling to Texas A&M. That pretty much dropped them down since they're now 0-2 to start the season. Texas just has looked kind of iffy early on. That loss to Ohio State, and they've struggled here against some group of 5 teams the last couple of weeks, and now Florida State up in front of them. So you look at what the Seminoles have done. I mean, a very strong resume so far. Obviously, a win over Alabama, who's now back into the top 15 after what they've done the last 2 weeks. And, we'll see how things go here. But this game between Florida State and Miami, I mean, it's looking like a definite top 10 game if Miami can stay unscathed this weekend against the Gators. And, Florida State takes care of business against Kent State and Virginia. But, hey, could it even be a top 5 game here, depending on how these next couple of weeks go?
Before we talk a little bit further into Clemson and Florida, and they've got a quarterback issue, could say for both teams right now, certainly down in Gainesville. We'll talk further on that in just a second. But just like Chris says here on Facebook, it's been kind of crazy, admittedly, going from unranked to 7th in the country. I don't think that's fully hit me yet, to be honest with you. I mean, it did maybe a little bit over the weekend, and I was like, wow, this is just very strange. When Sunday the poll votes came in, I saw FSU jump up 3 spots, and now you're creeping into the top 5. We're talking about Florida State potentially being a top 5 team. This could be a top 5 matchup. Of course, you got 2 more games before you face Miami, and I think everybody's already looking ahead of that for sure, as they should. But still, for the team itself, if they've got this game this weekend, then they go on the road on a Friday night, which, that's going to be a really good true test to see what this team is all about. But it is a crazy friggin' feeling, I got to admit. It is wild. You kind of just got to sit back and just look at kind of what this kind of roller coaster ride we've been on for Florida State football. What are your thoughts on this, Dustin? It's just crazy to think of, man.
It's hard to wrap your head around it. I mean, it's been a roller coaster for Florida State, dating back to that December of 2023. Obviously, the highs of winning the AC championship, then the college football playoff snub, everything that came with it last year. And then I think going into this season, it was kind of hard to have expectations for Florida State, just with all of the changes to the roster and the coaching staff, new offensive and defensive coordinators. I mean, Florida State rolled out 11 new starters on offense in that first game against Alabama. So just what we've seen in such a short period of time, it's been pretty mind-boggling. And you just have to hope that Florida State, obviously coming off that 2-10 season, unranked, no one gave them a chance against Alabama. There was so much motivation for them, so much hunger. And now that they're in the top 10, they have to keep that same mentality, especially, like we've talked about, it's happened so quickly, that rise from no one really talking about Florida State on this national scene to, hey, every projection we're now seeing for bowl games and college football playoffs, Florida State is in the mix. So, despite what people on the outside are saying, they just have to keep doing what they've been doing the entire offseason and just go to work on the field.
Clemson lost 17-10. Not 17-10. Is that right?
No, it was 24-21.
24-21. That's right. That was the LSU score. But yeah, lost to Georgia Tech 24-21. This was at Georgia Tech as well. And then you go over to the Gators. That was not a pretty game. I did not get to watch that one. I was on 1 year anniversary of dating duties. That's what I'm going to call it there. So didn't get to watch a whole lot of sports. Yeah, man. Thank you. Didn't get to do a whole lot of sports watching, although I did see a little bit of what was it? I think it was it was a Tennessee game. Yeah, and I had that in the background. There was a TV at the very far back of the establishment, and I hate to say it, but my girlfriend was right in front of me, but my eyes might have been going to the left a little bit over that TV. Oopsies. My bad, but she understands this is part of the game. This is part of the season. This is what happens, but this is why we picked the bye week to go on a date night. Just so happens that they had the game on in the very back. This is the establishment's fault. They should cut off the TV. But what are your thoughts on Clemson, man? And then also to Florida. I mean, it looks like they're getting college game day with Miami, but it just doesn't seem. I think Georgia Tech's a good team and they're coached well and they play with a lot of physicality, so that gives teams fits no matter what. But it just doesn't seem like they have stuff clicking on offense for both Clemson and the Gators.
I'm really shocked by Clemson. I mean, Cade Klubnik's back. A bunch of guys on offense were back. I know they're breaking in some new starters, especially there alongside the offensive line, but with what they have and the experience they have there on that side, and then everything on their defense, I mean, loaded with NFL talent, you would think that they would be off to a much better start. And, I tried not to take probably too much away from that game against LSU, since LSU was also a top 10 team. But, we saw the struggles against Troy. And then, that continued into that game against Georgia Tech on the road, which I talked about on the podcast last week. I was kind of highlighting it, like saying, hey, watch out for Clemson in this one, because I feel like Haynes King and Georgia Tech are really going to bring it and try and get the upset. And I mean, sure enough, a really gritty effort, and the Yellow Jackets are able to pull it off there in Atlanta. I don't know about anyone else, but that 24-21 score and a last-second field goal as time expires, giving me a little bit of PTSD from FSU Georgia Tech in Ireland. But yeah, that's a tough one for Clemson, now falling out of the top 25. And then you look over the Gators. I think this one's a little bit more predictable, just because DJ Lagway, I mean, he was banged up during that 2024 season. It was something that was talked about basically the entire offseason, that he was missing practice time, whether it was due to a lower body injury or due to a shoulder injury, and he really didn't do much during the preseason. And you even heard a lot of Gator reporters talk about it, that game against Long Island to open the season for the Gators. I mean, that was really the first time that he had done much on the field in a practice or competitive game situation for the majority of the offseason. So, I mean, then to go on and play a gritty USF defense, and then now go on the road into Death Valley, where, I mean, five interceptions, and it just seemed like, after that first interception, he just wasn't really confident in himself, and he was throwing some wild passes out there, man. I still think DJ Lagway, I mean, he's a really talented quarterback, 5-star coming out of high school. I mean, was like the high school player of the year over there in Texas, where he had some crazy stats, and we all know the caliber of competition in the state of Texas at the prep level. But yeah, they're gonna have to figure some things out here, because right now he's not trusting himself. It doesn't seem like he's fully confident, and those struggles are starting to pile up. And the Gators, I mean, that schedule, it just gets tougher from here. I mean, they're playing arguably the toughest schedule in the country.
That's rough. That's rough for Billy. It's really rough. It's tough times. But Florida State will go and face off in Gainesville. We'll be there. We'll be there for that one. Yeah, not looking so pretty whatsoever.
And it's going to be highlighted this weekend. I mean, Florida is going to be on College Game Day, so that'll be one that a lot of eyes will be on. And I think Miami, I mean, they're probably going to take that one to the wayside.
I think so too, and maybe it'll be fun for about a quarter and a half as well. But just the way that Miami's playing, it's impressive. And man, I'm ready. I want to get to Florida State versus Miami, a potential top 5 matchup. We'll see how things shake up across the college football landscape. But I mean, could you imagine not just like a top 5 matchup, but a top 5 matchup of teams that are playing with a lot of physicality, tenacity, and are playing with some discipline as well? I mean, that's just setting you up for prime time college game day type thing there. And too, if you think about college game day, having Kirk Herbstreit and the rest of ESPN there in front of a rowdy FSU fan base. I don't think they've been in Tallahassee. I was reading yesterday, like 11 years or so. Like it's been that long that a college game day has been in Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Would be pretty damn fun, I must say, at least on FSU side. I don't know about Kirk Herbstreit, but for the FSU fan base, absolutely would be fun.
Trying to think. I mean, 2014 Notre Dame, would that have been the last time that college game day was here? I mean,
I guess so. Yeah.
It's been about since then. I mean, obviously it hasn't been any time after 2017. So it's been quite a time for Florida State. And I mean, that would be a hell of a scene, a top 10 Florida State Miami matchup. I mean, we all know what that yearly rivalry has meant to both programs and college football throughout the decades. And I think, everyone can pretty much agree college football is better when Florida State and Miami, and sometimes Florida, are all good at the same time. And like you said, the college game day crew coming back to Tallahassee, I mean, the Florida State fans would antagonize the crap out of Herbstreit. On the Miami side, Carson Beck, the guy who led Georgia in that 2023 Orange Bowl against Florida State that resulted in the largest loss in program history. I mean, there's some major storylines here on both sides, and obviously a chance to take an early look at maybe an ACC championship showdown, what one of these two teams could do if they make it to the college football playoff. It would be a lot of fun for only the 5th game of the season.
Before we keep moving here, if you guys have any questions or topics you'd like to throw into the comments, we deeply appreciate it because we can bring those up at the end here of all of our talking points. We'll jump into all those. So please share anything that you got, comments, questions, topics, anything, and we'll do a deep dive into those. We appreciate all you guys hanging out with us on this awesome Monday afternoon. But what we got to do now, though, D-Lou, is we've got Monday Night Football on tonight. Our Bucks Game Day crew is covering the Houston Texans game tonight as well. We've got a lot of football tonight because also, too, we got the Chargers and the Raiders. We got an AFC West showdown as well. So what that means, D-Lou, is that we got to make some picks. We got to make some big-time picks here for Sleeper, our friends over there at Sleeper. Shout out to them for giving us this opportunity. There we go. Got to kind of find the windows here and there. You just kind of jut around. Where do we go? Here we are. We were looking at this earlier, though, and on Sleeper, there is a booster right now. A little bit of juice right there on Ashton Genty, 2.10 times your money if you pick him to score 1 rushing touchdown. I think we've got to go that route because he scored 1 last week.
He scored 1 last week. Now I'm wondering what the Chargers give up against the Chiefs.
And going over here to this Bucks game too as well. They've got Baker Mayfield throwing for 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irving, anytime touchdown at 1. I think Emeka Egbuka could have a big game here going against the Texans Texans secondary against Singletary because Singletary will be on Mike Evans. So there we go.
Honestly, that's probably the one that I feel the best about so far. I mean, Emeka, heck of a debut. He had to have had over 50. I know he had the 2 touchdowns. He definitely had over 53.5 in week 1,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I really like that pick there.
It's 67.
67, okay. Yeah, all right, let's stick there. Let's go Emeka Egbuka. Do we want to go over to Genty and give him a touchdown? He did not have a whole ton of yards last week, but they did give him a lot of rushes.
19 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown in that victory over the Patriots. I will say Chargers played the Chiefs in week 1, in that opener in Brazil. LA did not give up a rushing touchdown in that game.
Oh, okay.
So that's something to kind of think about here.
Dude, it's so hard in the early parts of the season to put these bets down. You're just kind of making a lot of guesses until you can get a read of what these teams look like really around week 3 and week 4. It's really kind of get your understanding what they're going to look like.
Vegas is at home. What's his rushing yard?
It's pretty high, 67.5 compared to what, he was supposed to have last week. You know what I kind of like? You could go to an alt here and you could go Justin Herbert on passing yards, 225, and shave it up a little bit. If we want to just get into the win column and feel secured, it's 1.27 times your money.
Herbert looked good last week. He had 318 against the Chiefs.
He looked really good. Maybe we throw that in there. Does anybody in the chat have any
225
ideas?
seems doable.
I think so too, as well.
What if we did Genty less than his rushing total? Because I know we've been doing mores, but we haven't tried a less yet.
Yeah, that's 1.72 times. If we were to add that, let's see what a $5 bomb. We got a promo. Oh, absolutely. Shout out to Sleeper for this. 25% profit boost. Oh, we got to use it. Expires in 9 hours. Sign me up. Let's go. $5 right there. That's not, we'll sit on this 5 for 21. We like that. All right, 5. We'll stick with that. Buka, 53.5 over on the receiving yards. Justin Herbert on the altered 225 plus. We'll do more there. And then Ashton Genty, we're going less than 68 yards there on the pick. We're throwing it in. $5 down. Shout out to Sleeper there on that. We got to get back in the win column because we did lose our last bet. We did have the rookie running back for the Commanders, Bill Column, and did not get the yards that we needed. But we went 2 out of 3 on that parlay. Just got to do better. Got to do better on those picks. But shout out to Sleeper for obviously sponsoring this show here. Use skill-based fantasy throughout all the season that you would like. You can use players, which we're hoping to do for FSU as they go into the Virginia game. We can put in some picks on Tommy Castellanos, Deuce Robinson, maybe some Usman Chroma in there as well. But also too across the NFL, betting making your picks on Justin Jefferson. You can throw in some guys like Lamar Jackson. I don't know if you want to do much of Patrick Mahomes right now. I would probably do the less on a lot of things, but the Chiefs aren't looking too great. But if you use code NOLES, as you can see down below, you will get a 100% match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. So shout out to them for sponsoring today's show. Now we bounce back and we talk about some Heisman odds. Why don't we? I don't know where we went. This thing is clunky today.
Oh, man.
Here's the Heisman odds for Tommy Castellanos. And things are continuing to increase here. We're seeing, like I said earlier in the show, a lot of national reporters putting Tommy Castellanos up there. But who would have ever thought now he's jumping into this big conversation of potentially going up to New York? I know it's only been 2 games, is what it is. But I'm pretty sure I don't use PFF a whole ton because I think it's very erratic in some of their stats and everything. But supposedly he's one of the top biggest throwers in college football right now, which I would have never said that or had the idea of that happening during the preseason. But here we are. Carson Beck at the top, John Mateer, Dante Moore goes out down to Nussmeier, who isn't exactly having the season that he would want to have. I think Gunnar Stockton is having a great start to the season there for Georgia. Ty Simpson ramping things back up, but then Tommy Castellanos is there at plus 1,600 per Caesars Sportsbook. Wow. Look at Tommy, man. Look at Tommy.
He's on the rise. That's for sure. And, that PFF stat you were talking about, a little bit inflated. I mean, obviously, Castellanos hasn't thrown the ball a ton through FSU's first 2 games. You think back to that Alabama game, he had the 40-yard throw to Squirrel White early on in the game, came back with a 72-yard pass to Jalen Lucas, the wheel route. out of the backfield. And then that game against East Texas A&M, where, I mean, he was just launching missiles downfield, 2 to Deuce. Obviously hit Salchuk out of the backfield for another touchdown. I think it was, 82 yards, 53 yards, and 42 yards just of touchdown throws in that game against East Texas A&M. So that yards per attempt, it's going to go down a little bit as the games progress. But I love what Tommy Castellanos has been doing for this Florida State offense through 2 games. You know, the Alabama game, it was just whatever it takes to win, whether that was hitting a couple of those deep throws. But I mean, really, for the most part, I think he did a good job, you know, checking things down and hitting stuff in the intermediate range. And then obviously with his legs and the dynamic threat that he brings there. And then against East Texas A&M, he just decided to open it up with his arm and see what that offense could do through the air. And we saw that connection of Deuce Robinson and Tommy Castellanos looking really good early in this 2025 season. So I think, Tommy, you know, the main thing is just keep leading the offense like you're doing, getting Florida State wins, and the stats will come, and that will mean the recognition will come.
100%. His leadership that he's brought immediately right off the bat was huge. We heard that from Earl Little last week here on the YouTube channel. If you guys haven't gone and checked that out, I would, because that was some good stuff there from Earl Little.
Mm-hmm.
Just gave us some really good insight on what Tommy Castellanos brings, along with Tony White, which there's a good question coming up here right now, D-Lou, in the comments. And we'll finish it off here from Chris King asking, any other updates or rumors on UCLA trying to steal Tony White? So it's pretty funny because he got asked this today by Brendan Sonolan of 247 Sports, and was, you know, bringing up the potential of, you know, Tony White, you know, listening and getting calls, whatever it is, to UCLA. I know that was like, he was listed as one of the top candidates for this. That kind of is just going to be the case as we had thought, just because Tony White's younger coach has excelled and all of his stops so far, and is doing a great job so far. Put Ty Simpson in a not so fun spot for him in this first game.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike Norvell addressed this today in the press conference when asked about it, and how he goes about having a coordinator or any other staff member when they have this opportunity given to them, you know, how he supports them, which he says, you know, he's going to do whatever it takes, you know, to make sure that what they're doing right now is the focus for Florida State. But if those opportunities arise, then he does, you know, want to see his staff members take advantage and take those opportunities, which is something that I think we all know will happen eventually with Tony White. But with UCLA moving on from their head coach, it obviously brought up the, you know, the reports of maybe Tony White getting in here. But UCLA has got a lot of issues. I have to bring up the stat thing up here with what they owe and everything. They got some issues financially all across the board, D-Lou.
A lot of issues, but hey, I mean, that could be the job that Tony White is willing to take, and go up there and invest time in that program and try to fix it. Because I mean, he does have the ties to UCLA. You know, was a 3-year starter there during his college days. Came back and worked as a graduate assistant at UCLA early on in his career in 2007. And, you know, I know before they hired Deshaun Foster, Tony White was one of the candidates who was reported to have went through the interview process with UCLA. So, I mean, they have taken a look at him in the past, and it'll be interesting to see if the Bruins try to do so again now that he's continued to forge out his coaching career these last couple of years at Nebraska, and then now at Florida State, with the success the Seminoles have had through the first 2 games of 2025. So, I mean, I could certainly see this being something that Tony White listens to. And like you said, Norvell, you know, he's going to do everything he can to get his coaches to where they want to go. And he talked about it. You know, there have been some guys that have come through and obviously went on to become head coaches. And then there have been some guys that have been at Florida State who have gotten opportunities elsewhere, and they've decided that it was better for them to remain with the Seminoles and continue on this current trajectory. So it'll be something to watch. I'm sure Tony White's name will continue to be in the mix for this UCLA job. And, you know, we'll see how it goes throughout this process. But I'm sure Florida State, Mike Norvell, they're going to do everything they can to keep this guy in Tallahassee, because we've seen what he's done on this defense through just 2 games. And I know Seminole fans and Florida State, they want to see a lot more of it, not only this season, but in the years to come, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. This is from Stuart Mandel here on X, and talking about the firing of Deshaun Foster, but what UCLA is currently dealing with $200 million athletics deficit over the last 6 years. no NIL pot of gold to work with there, which hurts them. Complete fan apathy as well. I mean, just looking at their stadium too, and their attendance not so great. And then, of course, Big Ten competitors that are more invested in football, and it's going to be a struggle there for UCLA. But like you said, when a head coaching position of that magnitude, because it is still UCLA, opens, you still got to listen. And interested to see. I think Tony White, would be likely a candidate for something like this, but it's early. It's very early on in the college football season, not just only for Florida State, but there is going to be a handful of more openings because these programs are moving on very swiftly from head coaches, D-Lou. I mean, you look at Virginia Tech as well, making a move there. I think it's very early. That's the thing. Very, very early.
That's just say it's the world we're in now. And, some of these programs are trying to get ahead of that coaching carousel and get an early start on things. Because, I mean, as we all know, you've got that early signing period that's been moved up even earlier in December now, right there around the conference championship weekend, and then the transfer portal stuff starts. So it's like you got to have your head coach and you got to have a plan in place before these things truly kick off. And you look at it from the Florida State perspective, and I mean, now 3 opponents on Florida State's schedule have fired their head coaches. They're going to get to face off with the first one this weekend, and Kent State, who moved on from their head coach back over the offseason. Same thing with that road trip out to Stanford. They're sporting an interim head coach. And then now Virginia Tech, whenever they come to Florida State for Senior Day, the final home game of the 2025 season for the Seminoles, they're going to have an interim head coach as well. So some real changes here, and we'll see how this continues to play out for some of Florida State's other opponents, because for all we know, I mean, there's maybe only a couple weeks left for Billy Napier.
I was going to say Billy Napier's on that list. I might not be facing Billy whenever Florida State faces off against the Gators in November in the Swamp. So it's things changes. Everything happens really quickly now in this day of college football, like D-Lou just said. So we'll keep an eye on that moving forward. But good question there, because Mike Norvell, he spent a lot of time talking about that question about Tony White and the potential of him entertaining whatever if UCLA gets involved there. But you would like to have Tony White as long as possible. You would like that, most certainly, for FSU's sake, just the way that they've been playing, and we're excited to see them again on Saturday. That's going to do it for this show today. We'll be back just probably about 48 hours from now, really. We're going to be going live on Wednesday evening for you guys. We will do a full preview and score predictions between Florida State and Kent State. We'll also go over some updates from Mike Norvell throughout the week, and we'll get a good feel, too, of the college football preview, too, for that weekend, and anything else of some quick hitters we will bring up for you guys. But we appreciate a ton for you hanging out with us this Monday. If you're here on YouTube, smack that like button down below. If you're new as well, welcome. Maybe consider hitting that subscribe button too. We're seeing a lot of growth there as well, and we appreciate it a ton. But with that being said, we'll see you on Wednesday evening, and y'all enjoy the rest of y'all's week. Peace.